Boom, we are alive, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. Is this a Bitcoin bull trap? I don't think quite yet. We're going to look over a few charts. As you can see, the light behind me is still green. Now, that's a bold statement, but I do believe that the first markers of our bullish, at least change of character, have taken place already, so we should suspect and kind of expect bullish momentum to continue. And I'm going to explain the psychology as we go through that. For those of you that are new to the channel, we like studying the Wyckoff methodology, the heuristic of the composite operator, the idea that one person is in control of all the market, and what you're trying to do is figure out what their intentions are within the market and the kind of the footprint that that market operator leaves as you roll through. So on the screen here now, boom, you should be able to see our Bitcoin chart, and everything should be working smoothly. Great. Okay, so here's the Bitcoin chart on the 4 hour. Now, if we go to the 6 hour here, one of the reasons why this is so exciting is because we've already been through a long-term accumulation range, likely completing the first automatic rallies and secondary tests into your spring. Now, we've talked about the potential of this happening for months, and it looks like we had a confirmation. So, went a little lower than I thought we would for the spring, potentially. That $16,000, I thought we would maybe go to 27. So the fact that we dropped a few grand below that, not a huge difference. I did say we should expect volatility. I was a little bit more in there than I thought we were exposed to, but nonetheless, that's the way the markets work. And what we appear to have done, and I'm going to show why I think this is so important. For now, this is Ape token. Now, people argue that Bitcoin is better than Ape token, and largely I would agree. But the important part here is what we find when we look at Ape token. We actually find a very similar pattern and setup start to take place. And what's important here is understanding that a market operator at the scale of basically everybody moving is going to give us a footprint in pretty much every asset. So when you look at Avalanche, exactly the same thing as Bitcoin. So effectively, for price structure, Bitcoin and Avalanche are identical. And same with Gala Games. Now, we've been watching a smaller portion of Gala Games, making a larger thesis about why we should expect continued bull market momentum. So we made that last week with Fetch. We made this sentiment idea here. So I'm going to get rid of our Bollinger Bands, and let's just draw a horizontal trading range. This is a pretty classic take on the Wyckoff methodology, is that you have this long-term accumulation range that started here. You had your first primary selling points and selling climax into your automatic rally, your secondary tests, all your tests, and then your spring. Springs are usually categorized as something that happens that's extraordinarily out of market normal, often highlighted by the mentality of buy when there is blood in the streets. And as lo and behold, the spring took place pretty much with the beginning of the downfall of FTX and all of its counterparties, taking out billions of dollars of leveraged risk that was in the ecosystem from a fraudster that was doing a great job of hiding himself. So what does that mean moving forward? Well, this is where I think it starts to get interesting. Is here, looking at Fetch, from the spring onwards to the first move up, we had a move of around approximately 133%. And that's a huge move. And what happens here during the retrace is most people think that that was it, and they leave the market, not recognizing that the operator who's now marking the market up has been accumulating for months now. And they don't want to just get a little bit of a change of character. They want a big change of character. They want to pull every last person who left this market back in to some degree or another, so that they have people to sell on top of. And that's what the composite operator is doing right now. They've made their first markup and they want to continue. So here with Fetch, we saw this horizontal reaccumulation range fire out of the back end of it after already doing 130%, right? So here, 130% basic ish from the very bottom of the spring, or for the first range here, into this longer accumulation range, which took approximately like 25 to 22 days. After that, again, we can have already continued up for another 100% effectively. And I think that's what we're going to see throughout other areas in the market. So we'll zoom out. We'll use Gala Games here as an example. Gala Games has been in a multi-month falling wedge Not that the wedge is important, but it's the relationship of the wedge to the trading range. If those of you remember, we'll go back through our homework here with Arcane Bear, you will remember that phases A and the automatic rally in phase B is pretty much what we saw here with Gala Games, where we fell down to our selling climax, had our first automatic rally and secondary tests into a low volume spring, completing what is this falling wedge. So I can clean this up here again a little bit just to kind of better highlight my point. So here's the falling wedge into the bottom of phase C, just as we found out here, and a move all the way back up to the top of the SOS into the trading range itself, where phase D acts as tests and a continuation of the move to the top of the box. Now, if, and this is what's important to remember here, we have not seen a single reaccumulation range since way back here of September 2021. So this was the very last reaccumulation range we saw, where we knew that there was a bull market setup about to take place. And look how powerful it was out the back end. Immensely powerful, right? It sucked every last person that was out of the market back into the market for them to sell. And we've been in a downtrend for Gala Games since exactly November 2021. So effectively we've been going down for over 400 days. So for the first time in basically 400 days, we've witnessed something that's really important. And I went over this prior, but let's look at it a bit closer. Number one, we broke out of the long-term trading range and the trend that we had just been previously looking at in Gala Games. And what we did is we formed this tiny little accumulation range right here. So I'll take the markers away. As you can see on the left-hand side right here, this is a very small reaccumulation range. And what's important to remember here is that you can find these structures on any time frame, also meaning that they are scale invariant. So you can find it on the 10, the 15, the 4, the day, the weekly, and usually the longer the absorption time within these reaccumulation patterns, the more reliable they are. But nonetheless, very quickly within Gala Games, as soon as we had the first reaccumulation pattern that we have seen in 420 days, the market moved up dramatically in every single asset. Now, what's important here is I think we are witnessing, again, another reaccumulation structure. And this is often what happens after that big change in character. Now, this means that the big operator has been controlling and accumulating for months, and their goal is to mark up this price even higher and then start selling. So I don't believe we're at the end of the bull cycle, at least this short one. I don't think it's the full bull market, but at least a big rally to the top of the trend line. So again, if we go back out to Gala Games here, we'll use this as our continuation example. The first extension of this move would effectively go all the way up to another 100% higher where it is today. Very similar to what we saw with Fetch after its first big accumulation range. We saw another 15 days afterwards where there was a 100% extension after already having gone up 130%. And that's where it gets difficult, is most people are like, oh, it's a bull trap, they get out. No one's bullish in the market, blah, blah, blah. Why would all the macro headwinds? Perfect. This is actually the perfect setup for this. So I believe Gala Games here, again, back down in the tiny time frame, you can't even see what we're looking at in the chart on the bigger context, is this reaccumulation range. So in the private bear den, we've gone over these a bunch for the last 3 years now. Geez. So this is the reaccumulation schematic I think that we're looking at here, which is reaccumulation schematic 3. It is the most powerful, and one of the things we use to validate this idea is the growth of the ecosystem itself. So we go over here, we go to CoinGecko, and we can see that some of the top, first off, don't just join any top mover. That's not a great way to go. Serum here up 250%, but here we find Gala Games at 180% over the last 7 days. So it's one of the strongest movers within the ecosystem in terms of price upward, like price growth. Solana not far behind it there. Fetch AI, one of the other ones we were just looking at. And this continued market growth, Aptos as well, Decentraland. These are important because the last time we saw this take place in early 2020, those that moved first moved the fastest and the farthest. Whereas I was often trying to set up positions and trades that was not yet in place. So they were setting up to move forward, whereas it's easier to often get in what already has momentum and follow through, understanding the market operator is moving those ones because that's the ones they want more of. So it's a adds to the thesis of why looking for the ones that are the strongest movers at these times are so important. So back to our reaccumulation range for schematic 3. I believe that we have already hit phase A and phase B and moved into effectively where we are right here, phase C. I believe that this is phase A and this is phase B with our test right here. So this to me is two beautiful things are taking place right now. One, we only had one small reaccumulation range and then moved up quite quickly. So it's very likely that we're going to get the continuation just by that fact alone. Secondly, this is what's super important, and it's one of the things it took me a while to understand. Even in the peak of the bull market last time, I was having a difficult time understanding this, was understanding that looking for the supply markers disintegrating shows absorption. If we were seeing an increase in supply and an increase in volatility here, I would be leaving every position I had basically, or I will in the future. This time we'll mark a little bit of a different sentiment effectively, because here what we're seeing instead of distribution is accumulation. We see absorption of the price and absorption of the supply as time moves, and each of these reactions is actually getting less volatile. So that's really important. As we move in here, just to take a closer look at what that looks like, for the back of the LPS range here, we are consistently now testing effectively the last break across the creek here, which would be drawn out something like this. Drawn something like this. So we're now back testing the creek. This looks like a perfect technical setup, and across the markers on all these different assets, we see the early stages of this. Now, if we look here closely at the larger scale of what brought us into these reaccumulations here, phase D can have deep LPS tests, right? So there's a high potential as well that this actually comes back all the way down to the Bollinger Bands and retests around $13 and builds for about 2 to 3 weeks before moving up significantly higher. That's a high potential as well. But right now, this looks very technically strong in multiple assets. So even looking at Bitcoin here on the closer time frame, now again, this is not a cleanly well-defined trading range, but as you can see, kind of at the top of out the back of the movement, between 16,000 and 17,000. There's all these tiny little trading ranges that took place that all broke above the top trend line, moved up. And as soon as they broke above the top trend line that they had recently placed, like this is an accumulation range, it continued to shoot up. But those are very small. They're not as reliable. And here we're getting to a bigger trading range. Again, volatility is increasing, but supply is also decreasing. This is a very strong signal. Again, the idea of supply within this price signature took me a little bit longer to grasp, but here the simplest way that I've seen kind of represented is to basically remove the color. Actually, it's a great way to do it. If we just go in here, there's a few ways to do this. One, we could just remove the volume signature color and make it all effectively white like this. Boom. That way we can't tell if it's buying or selling. And you can do the same thing with your candles as well. This helps a lot of people to kind of get rid of the bias of what they're witnessing and focus solely on the structure. And right now what we're seeing here is and also a decrease in supply here too on the way down. So the selling, even though the price is increased, the supply is decreasing across the board, and so is the volatility. The volatility here is less than right here. So this is kind of a key important structural information that really made the difference for me last time. And as far as I can tell, we look like we're going to get that another breakout to the bullish side here. We're probably going to, for Bitcoin, let's get rid of some of these smaller drawings and zoom out a little bit. We can even go back to our single colored frame just to get rid of the bias of color trading. And we'll go up here too. So we've just jumped up top to the 21,000 point. But as you'll see, a lot of people recognizing, as we've pointed out pretty much all the way into this move, it's likely we're hitting a reaccumulation and that this is the spring. That was kind of the long-term guess coming into this point. Again, I didn't think we'd go as low, but here we are. Perfect. better late than never, something, I guess. So now that we're hitting this mid-range point, as soon as we close above this, we're almost instantly going to go to $24,000 to $25,000. But the problem here is it's easy to suspect that we're going to get a big pullback and a lot of people will wait for those pullbacks. But in that early stage of the bull market's first move, that pullback doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen on reason, because the big operators don't want anybody else to buy in, because they own the majority of the stock and the share or the crypto, whatever, which one of these we're looking at, and they know that. They've just found that out by pumping the price up. So their job now is to pump the price up before anybody else can get in. And at that very last minute, when the rest of the people are finally buying back in at $24,000 to $25,000, because, hey, this could be an accumulation channel. Now, this is what's difficult. This could set up to be, you could get an upthrust and you could get a total breakdown. We don't know that this is accumulation yet. Accumulation and distribution can be very similar. But the fact, again, as we've looked at with Gala Games, on this larger chart, we are 400 something days out from the last upside we've had at all in this market. And that's a significant chunk of time. And not only that, we've spent months, let's see here, approximately 241 days to get to this point for the first step in the bull market, or a bull cycle, and not the full bull market like where you could expect 100x gains. This will just be to the top of the trading range. And it will still surprise everyone. So here, again, I think this is a perfect technical setup. There's a few different ways to look at this. Again, ape token, there's across the board we are seeing setups like this. And that to me is what you look for. You look for the composite operator making footprints, and then you follow the ones that have the most momentum. And Gala, in my opinion, has led that by an order of magnitude. Not far out there, though, is things like Aptos, Fetch, Decentraland. There are some strong movers on that first week. And back in 2020, I stayed away from some of the strong movers because they had already moved so much and aimed at things that were setting up technically really well. But now I've come to realize that the reason you want to follow the ones that already have moved so much is because that's the one the operator is clearly interested in accumulating more of. So it makes sense to follow the momentum, even though it's counterintuitive to the risk portion of the trade. I think this, again, is one of the reasons why the market operator does such a good job at not letting the average retail participant in until the end or near the end of the cycle. So always learning, always growing. Bitcoin now at $21,300 on the 15 minute. It looks like it's about to break out. Let's keep our larger time frame here and then zoom in. Yeah. Again, on the downside here, though, is when you're dealing with horizontal trading ranges, you really want to wait for closes outside of this that are significant. And we just haven't seen that yet. We've seen distribution and sell every time. But this to me looks like it was an SOS, a backup phase. And this was kind of your last point of supply. Because again, this was diminishing volume for Bitcoin here as well. Just this screen where we took off the color. But effectively, this diminishing volume is of a high likelihood the effect of accumulation and absorption of Bitcoin itself, and not a bearish signal effectively. So I do suspect a lot of people are going to get kind of caught off guard and miss out on that one. But nonetheless, we'll go with that. Now the markets are generally closed today, I think, for Martin Luther King Day. We'll celebrate them by keeping the markets open in the crypto sector because freedom of choice or something like this. And what I wanted to point out, one more thing. Oh yes, this type of accumulation schematic, again, which is what I think we're witnessing with Gala, is one of the reasons why I'm so excited here for this particular position, is because if it's a continuation move and I take a larger base that, hey, video gaming may be adopted faster than the crypto sector because games already have a multi-year track record of selling digital coins and digital assets for hundreds of billions of dollars in, day out. This move, I think, is probably pretty easily going to pull 130, maybe even upwards of 240% before very likely coming all the way back down to the bottom. And then what I do suspect is that there is a high similarity between the bottom of Bitcoin in 2019, 2018. Sorry, let's just go back and even look at that. We'll go back out to the weekly. Yes, here it is, drawn. Okay, so this is an example of what I think is going to happen. I think we're at the bottom of an accumulation range for some of these, like Gala, and then what we've witnessed is basically the original selling climax before you see a much larger automatic rally. basically a trade within a trade type mentality. So at the end of this up market cycle, we'll be looking to close out a good chunk of the positions that we've entered for this one. So just to be cautious, because I suspect that we've got a much longer trading cycle to take us up to new all-time highs, but don't fade the bull when it starts is effectively my thought process. So this early cycle that takes place here in any asset, when you're down near the bottom, it's tricky, the first little set piece out. Actually, look how similar this looks to that Bitcoin, this Bitcoin flag that we're looking at right now. Actually, let's use the same hollow candle indicator. So okay, so here's the hollow line indicator for today, the first breakout for Bitcoin at 21,000, and here's that hollow line indicator on the, can I get it on the 6 hour too? It'll look basically identical. Yeah, here we go. Perfect. Okay, so look how similar these are, where that last backup, and then we were just off to the races basically. So this little backup phase that we've just taken into account here on this side of this side of Bitcoin could be a really powerful move to continuation move. And so that's what I suspect. I think a lot of people are going to fade that until the last minute, and it'll trick a lot of people into the market at the wrong time. I don't think this is the wrong time to be in the market, although it's definitely more risky than the exact bottom of that spring. Past experience tells me to just remain confident in the market operator's direction, and it's usually for a bit longer than just the first toenail. They got to put at least their whole foot in the water to make some waves. So I do suspect that will be the case. And then just remember to add on to your studies. Ultimately we try to focus on long-term venture capital plays, ideas that are asymmetric over a 5 to 10 year horizon, because it pays off the best and requires the least amount of effort. But at the same point, when there are moves like this, and we've seen these trading ranges before, it's important to pay attention, because you can make keen decisions in that time. So I do expect we're going to get a surprising run, not a full bull market, not like the extension of when Bitcoin went from 10 grand to 60, but more like when Bitcoin went from 3 grand to 12. So in relationship to previous high, if Bitcoin were to do something like that again, that could put us, where did I have it marked out? Yeah, at the trading range itself, upwards of 25,000. And an extension or a breakout of that, probably even as high as $40,000 for Bitcoin. This is where everyone would be drawn back into the market. Oh my God, Bitcoin's going to 100 grand. We're having $100,000 parties again. That's where I'm going to be very cautious, is it around $40,000 Bitcoin. And I do think we're going to get up there. I think we're going to surprise a lot of people and do something like this. Now, again, whether or not we continue that pattern, or if this is just an automatic rally of another trading range that takes place, where you see something potentially like this that goes down, boom, boom, and then into new highs potentially, that's not out of the realm of possibility. So I kind of missed that the early times as well, was understanding this idea of scale and variance, or that you can fit these these trading ranges on multiple time frames, that you're going to see it on the 15-minute, the 6 hour, the daily, the weekly, and then this really small one didn't take 2 years to get here, but it don't fade. Again, 207 days of accumulation at these prices. The market operator wants to sell it to you at twice that. Okay, yeah, so we'll take some questions now, and we'll go from there. I should probably clean up these charts again, try to find a uniform way to share these. Tell me if you guys like these blank candles. I've been playing around with that a little bit back here with Bitcoin too. Yeah, so this is the larger structure. Again, what we ended up seeing was same thing happened with Bitcoin. You had a trading range that effectively took place here, the small trading range of the selling climax that started it, and then a much larger trading range effectively here, so that you found that you were at the top of the automatic rally, from a distribution to selling climax to automatic rally. You could look at it as a secondary test effectively as well. And this was the jump across the creek, and it continued upwards. So this is, again, the most difficult part of anything when you think of a fractal nature of thought, is that you can find its replica in every time frame possible, basically. So it can feel disillusioned if you look too closely. I try to recommend, the 4 hour chart here for Gala Games has been really nice to kind of highlight the reaccumulation pattern that we're in, or that I believe we're in. You know, it looks like I'm pretty confident about this. Look how sexy this chart is. Boom, boom, boom. And in the last kind of final stages of that LPS test, and it didn't go, just wicked lower, but couldn't get below our the top of our trading range here, basically. So yeah, these look like powerful changes to me. The first time I've seen it in 400 days, and that's that. So let's take a look at some of your guys' thoughts. Let's see the 1 month and 3 month candles. Okay, let's go to Avalanche here. So these are all such small moves. Measuring them on the 1 month or the 3 month seems a little abstract. Yeah, because they're not even changing color on the Heikin-Ashi chart yet. That's on the monthly. Let's see if it's changed on the weekly. Okay, you've got the first 2 green weekly candles that we've seen in a long time. And that supply signature, ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge amount of buy in pretty much across the board of assets, and very similar to our selling climax, if you note. And if you remember from the early studies, we looked for selling climaxes that were equivalent to springs. And that's basically what we've seen here. I mean, you've got all the indicators from the smaller time frames to the larger time frames. It's hard not to be bullish, especially on the video games, in my opinion. But yeah, it's hard not to be bullish with these types of signals. This multi-month falling wedge to break out, and the likelihood of at least $30 avalanche here is so high, in my opinion. Anyways, not financial advice. Don't ever listen to people on YouTube to make your own investments. This is just stuff that I'm using. I'm a big fan of these methods because they help remove some of the emotion. And over time, I've realized I'm actually much better at finding the kind of fear-based bottoms than I am at just selling the exact top. So make sure you factor ways in to highlight what you're good at. Most people don't show up till the middle of the market, which is why we usually suggest a kind of more of a venture capital based approach, so that you can start making month over month entries that don't wipe you out, because you want to stay here for the long term. The growth on some of these things has been absolutely astronomical. So we'll go back to the daily here. And yeah, although there is, the potential to have a bit of an LPS here, and you could suspect that often these LPSs would come back down to the bottom of the Bollinger Bands, which would be around $13 for Avalanche. That's highly likely, but there's something about the way the bull market moves where the first step has already been made. So I won't actually, the argument for another extension here on Avalanche is actually pretty decent. The structure looks great as well, but again, the risk here is that for all of for these, we're not at the top of the bull, or we're not at the bottom of the bands right now. And normally we'd like to see is like primary support, buying climax, and then an automatic rally that brought us, or an automatic reaction on the downside, not an automatic rally, but an automatic reaction to the downside as the test of the Bollinger Bands. And that's normally where the trading range would form. So normally look for trading ranges that form through here. Whereas with Gala Games right now, this has not come back down to the Bollinger Bands. And that's the only thing that bothers me about this particular idea is it early, and this is just going to do this before the final breakout. But that first step, the fact that these are the first, again, reaccumulation channels we've seen in 400 days, I think is more than enough confidence for me to go, okay, we've got more than 5 days of a bull market upcycle. That's the whole point of what the composite operator is about to do. He owns most of it already, and he's going to sell it on a bunch of people who think that this is a fake out. Anyways, that's my general thoughts at the moment. Take a look at your guys' thoughts and questions here for a second. The best thing you can do is take this information and make your own decisions that you can understand. And yes, Jerry's got a great point here. You need all forms of education should be practiced skill sets that you can build conviction on through time. If you think you can learn it right away, you're doing something wrong, because it takes a lifetime to learn anything that's worth learning. So I've been in the markets for a bunch of years, and this trading methodology that Wyckoff came up with, and again, the heuristic, I think, is one of the most important parts, is this idea that one person is basically moving the entire market, and they're trying to do specific things. So the last 6 months, they've been trying to accumulate at the lowest price possible. So they'd buy a bunch of shares and then sell a bunch of shares, and then buy a bunch of shares and then sell a bunch of shares. These market maker potentials are designed to push everything down as low as possible. So this next phase is also designed to not let a lot of people join in, so the first moves happen really quickly with very little reaction time to the downside, and they mark up the price until even the last people who were bearish, like, oh, the macro headwinds is blah blah blah, are pivoted and switched. Now, from that early kind of subset of moments in 2020, which is another great example. For those of you that were here with us in the early 2020, this is one of the most exciting moments in my trading lifetime. Probably because it was the scariest, but it was the most informative because of that. I learned what people dying in the streets look like, or maybe not. It was hard to say. Maybe it was just Chinese propaganda of people falling over in the street. But nonetheless, that early signal, I actually went short Bitcoin in March, or pretty early in around mid of February, before March, because in January 20th, I was so worried that this thing had come straight out of a science fiction novel, basically. So I was very bearish on the market. I felt the macro headwinds, and no one was taking into account of what that could mean. And I was right. We fell dramatically. But this first bit of reaccumulation ranges that we saw here, that went like this, and the back up above the Fox, it wasn't until here where we saw this nice long reaccumulation range. I was like, oh shit, we're bullish. Like, everybody should be bullish. But I missed from $6,000 to $9,000 to switch back into a bullish case scenario because I was so bearish back here, like, oh my God, the world what happens if you've got a virus that comes out of a lab, and and it was just my head was spinning in circles here. I was like, the world is over. So it took me a while. Now, again, I was still one of the early ones to shift my perspective to bullish. I think we're even earlier in this point now, recognizing that initial spring and that first few subsequent steps afterwards that all say bull is here, at least for the temporary. Anyways, on investment advice, don't mess around with money you can't afford to lose. And so lock it away, usually for the longest term possible. It's the best for most new people. If you want to get into day trading and studying, it's definitely a lot of ways to make money from being right on those avenues. It's a lot harder. It takes a lot of focus and energy, and it's sometimes worth it. I mean, if you can pull it off, it's definitely worth it. It's just not my cup of tea. Right now, though, this structure just looks too beautiful to fade. I'm like, oh no, I don't want to miss that structure. This looks so declining volumes through the trading, declining volatility, ladies and gentlemen. This looks good. And so this next little bit here will be to bore people, hopefully to let people forget about the fact that Gala Games is just up, and now they're going to try to jump into Bitcoin or into Solana or into anything else. But for me, the fact that it was one of the first movers and one of the strongest movers outside of the box is a big indicator for one of the things I got wrong back in 2020. During that switch from my bearish world is ending sentiment to holy shit, they just printed $1 trillion. Not that I think there's $1 trillion here on the sidelines, but there's enough big funds and people who have capital that they need to distribute. So it really kind of makes sense. Now, could we go lower? Yeah, we could. This could actually be it could be a larger fake out, but I don't think we're going to see it in this first step. We're still too early in the step of the campaign. The market operator even if he wants to distribute, he's going to try to get rid of it a little bit higher than this. So I suspect we see markups in a bunch of assets over the next 40 days. Where we go after that, it's hard to say. Again, even in 2020, we saw some of these that were really bullish setups, but as soon as they got to the top of the box and they did like this, it was game over, and they lost. So this can happen, and this is one of the difficult things about understanding how accumulation and distribution change after phase C, because they can look really similar basically right up to the last moment. So usually it's good to spend time building and reducing positions, not just jumping in and out of the market. Although some people, again, you can do that. Some people are really good at it. It's not my style. So anyways, drink a little bit of orange juice here. Let's see what you guys have any thoughts. Are you investing in other coins? I don't even know what that means. Let's see. Greg Jones says, Arcane Bear, SHIB chart looks really good to me. Could you take a look? Okay, well, first off, I don't like any of the fundamentals of SHIB aside from the ridiculousness of it. but that's never been a problem in the past. It's one of the reasons why I actually thought Dogecoin was a good idea, and it turned out right about that. The downside, though, is being confident about any large positions here for me. I just wouldn't want to take them. I don't know what the max. So again, here, one of the difficult parts too is you don't actually have a solid breakout quite yet. It's just starting, and there's not a lot of there's not a huge amount of momentum. Yeah, you're up only 40%, right? So the fact that we have other tokens that have moved quite a bit quicker, I would just that just wouldn't even fit my bill. I'm like, I don't even care. Even if I liked it nowadays, I just wouldn't even care what it is. I'm looking for that early momentum, like now. I've needed it to maybe already happen. One of the reasons why we were excited about Near was that same idea, though, is we broke out of the downward trend line quite early and had seen about 100% growth quite quickly. Solana was actually one of those ones too, where it was just astounding, where it was from the bottom to the top, 150%. So not always a key indicator, but that's a lot of supply being chewed up by the market. And again, equivalent to the previous part of the spring, which we've seen in the past. So not clear markers on all of these. Like I don't feel as confident about Solana at the moment, although we've got a bunch invested there in their gaming ecosystem still. They're going to have to do a lot of brand fixing, and we just don't see that large trend change back into the trading range that we've seen with some of these other assets. Again, like Ape token is clearly in the hands of a good operator. Look how this chart is basically perfect, from selling climax to potential spring and secondary tests. Like this looks fundamentally perfect. So that's usually what I try to keep an eye on from what I learned in 2020, which is look for those that had the strongest technical and strongest financial or financial growth margins already, so the largest spreads in price, and that's why I'm keeping an eye on things like Ape and Gallic Games. This kind of makes sense, I think, for us. Okay, nice soothing voice. Feels like nap time. Thanks. That's funny. Recession, interest rates forgotten about. No, the macro headwinds are still really, really bad. Again, this is likely a temporary market operation, which is also why I suggest that at the top of this trading range is not a great place to be super long. It's the place where you'd want to be exiting the positions again. Light is green. Yeah, it's a temporary green. No, it's not the full bull market, but I do suspect that we're going to get a move and a campaign that throws a lot of people off, where they're, oh my God, I got to get back in the market because it's $36,000 Bitcoin. And what if it goes to $60,000 Bitcoin? And we haven't seen that conversation in too much on crypto Twitter yet. Although people are euphoric and excited, fear is still the predominant marker. Most people are still gone. So. How do you treat market PTSD? Generally, it's the best to build conviction over time with any position in amounts that you can basically spend. Like a subscription. Investing should feel almost like a subscription model to something, I think, because then you know how much capital you can allocate every month. Or a bill. Just subscription sounds like more fun. It's something you're choosing to do, whereas a bill feels like I have to pay my electricity. Like, I mean, I love that I have electricity, but it doesn't feel as fun. Or as a subscription model, it's like I'm paying for like a membership on something I feel cool about, Bills I feel like I have to pay, even though they're important. Like, I love my electricity. I don't know not ragging on having lights. You know what I'm saying? One bill and subscription, I think, feel different, even though they're effectively the same thing. I have a subscription to my electricity bill. Something like this, because then it looks more of like a buying process. And for most people over time, that aggregates the best results, because you get to build conviction about what you're interested in throughout the expansion and contraction of the first cycles of price. And that's usually where most people get removed, is they get a 10x and they leave right before a 100x, and they jump in the 100x, and then it comes back down 90%, so they're lower. It's a difficult game to play, the entering and the exiting. So it's often easier to build big positions in the things you feel most confident about. And then as you find things you're more confident about, lean into those things, because they're the most profitable quite often. So it's kind of this follow-on suit, I think, that often people don't recognize as well, is that if you made a good investment in said thing, you should continue to make more investments in the said thing. This is why people like Bitcoin. It's like, oh, this has been a great investment. I should keep investing this. And it's lasted years already. How awesome is that? Where some of these are like with venture capital, it's, who knows? Good luck. 99% of everything we touch is going to fail. But that's on purpose, because if you're right early enough, then it doesn't really matter. You make way past those games. We try to highlight books like 100 Baggers for this reason, so people understand how much upside potential there is in being right about something that other people disagree with you on when everybody disagrees with you. And that's so if you're building conviction, it's just easier to do through time and in amounts that you consider part of your consistent buying strategy, instead of like, I'm going to get in and out of the market in 40 days, basically. It's a little bit of a different style. Tio, we need a Star Atlas update. Actually, I've been a big fan of all the work they've been producing recently. They're up quite a bit as well. We have a venture play there, so I'm not taking any trades there. We already have a venture position where it's like, we'll just wait, and hopefully we get a bunch of it back, because some of it's stuck on FTX. Luckily, not all of it got stuck there, but they were actually doing just what doesn't matter. Y'all don't care. Nonetheless, some of our position got just given away to the Democrats, apparently. Do you use the bear claw still? Hey, great. That's a fun question. Do you still have the bear claw? But just not on here right now. I'm focusing more on the trading ranges. Has been a nice change of pace. So we'll keep an eye on that. What other indicators do you use? I try not to use too many indicators. I try to focus just on these horizontal ranges. Although, mind you, one of the strongest ones I've learned here is in the bull market, like looking for the end of the bull market now. There's some clear ones where I'm just going to take that as the end of the market cycle, basically. I was much better calling the bottom than I was the top, so let's fix that. Getting the bottom right is hugely productive, but only if you also then get the top right. So we got the first part of the process right. Now getting the second part of the process right is part of the trick. I do like the RSI. I like understanding where we are in the RSI as a whole. This is another kind of potential indicator here, is if you look at the daily RSI on Bitcoin, we have just popped above the 50-point line. So we're right in the middle here. And we were getting higher lows in the RSI as our price went lower for a little bit. We can also use the 3 moving averages. We can find out where we are on the weekly. Oh, yes, here we go. The 21-week moving average. Shoop-de-doop, we've closed right and just broke right through that. I highly doubt that that's anything other than a bullish indicator. The breakthrough of the 21 weekly moving average, we have not been able to close above it at all since November 2029, effectively. Multiple tests, and our first breakthrough above, I suspect, will go to around 27,500. We'll come back to retest, and we'll find out if this was just a trap or not. But we're definitely going to 25,700, in my opinion. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Oh, there we go. There you go. So here we go. The 21-week moving average. You can see this white line coming down. We broke out in pretty much the exact middle of the trading range. And on the weekly here too, the RSI, even though the price has been falling, the RSI was actually getting slightly higher. It's hard to tell here because there we go. See, even with the falling price, we can see bullish divergence here on the RSI. So this multi-month bullish divergence, it's to switch now. I don't think it's just going to stop at 50. I think we're going to try to run all the way up to an extension into the 70 to maybe even 80 point on oversold, and then the market will come back down. So just a temporary green light in the background to freak everybody out. And anyways, leave it at that. Maybe 1 or 2 more questions from your guys at the end. Oh, and by the way, come to Costa Rica for a retreat. You go to arcanebear.com/retreat. I don't want to sell it any harder than that though right now. Let's see. Robert says, thank you. I haven't tuned in here for over a year. Good to be back. Oh, the first sign I saw of a reaccumulation channel, I was like, hey, whoop, boo. That's my favorite part of the market. Okay. Glad you're back. Yes, glad to be back as well. Arcane Bear, do you use any centralized exchanges? Currently, no. Everything is... I was buying a bunch of tokens yesterday right from Ledger. I was like, beep, 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 beep. That's it now. FTX was the last straw for me. I got so excited about them too. I was like, yes, my boy. I was so wrong. No, never again will I make that philosophical. I won't throw my philosophies away just because the company's profitable or appears profitable. That was so ridiculous. I can't actually, it's almost ironic that that's the very first exchange blow up I've gone through, considering how long I've been here. Like I dodged a bunch of bullets to get to this point. So for that to happen, I'm like, oh, okay, well, you win some, you lose some. So yeah, this to me looks like we'll continue on higher on multiple time frames, and I think for good reason too. It's a pretty nice looking chart, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. Keep an eye on it. Okay, one or two more thoughts here. Bitcoin to 14 grand, green lights. Bitcoin already hit 15K. Yeah, technically I was on vacation during that first drop into the spring. So you wouldn't have seen from me really. That makes sense. Congratulations. Yeah. But the first footprint of a reaccumulation signal we've seen in months and months. So that's pretty high. But yeah, again, we're super oversold on the daily. It would be nice to see a bigger trading range form here on the 4 hour, right? But I just don't know if we're going to get it. We didn't really get it in 2019 when we went from 3 to 6 to 13. It just went bloop, 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 bloop until it started to sell out around 13,000. So that's like, in my mind, that's around 27 to 40,000 for Bitcoin right now. But we won't know. Just keep a close eye on it. That's the move for now. Anyways, great to see you guys. Happy New Year. It's Tia with the Arcane Bear. We're signing off for the rest of the day. Just a live TA update. Actually, I could probably hang out here for another 15 minutes. Nah, we'll just leave it at that. Thank you guys. We'll see you on the next episode. Monday and Wednesday from now on. I'm going to do it pretty routinely, or like on at least a consistent day, so that you guys know. Monday and Wednesday, Tio's going to talk about something that he finds interesting. We'll see you guys again soon.